I watched it and it ended. I was just like, that was just crap.
We don't have to do that because we're setting the tone with visual cues.
The big chunk of that fight is in their mind. Right? Oh, I love this movie so much. I love it much more now than I did when I was younger. Welcome back to another episode of Real Chumps. We're chatting about movies feels like hanging out with friends. I'm your host, Marcel, and with me as always is my co-host, Danny.
This week, we are diving into the 2002 film Hero, a visually stunning epic directed by Zhang Yimou, starring Jet Li, Donnie Yen, Maggie Cheung, Zhang Yimou, and Donnie Yen.
In this episode, we'll explore the film's breathtaking cinematography, its layered storytelling structure, and the profound themes that elevate Hero beyond the simple wuxia film. But before we roll that intro, make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode.
Join in on the community by subscribing to us on YouTube at Real Chums. With that being said,
let's roll that intro.
All right, so we are back, bro.
Back for another episode. Sorry, I'm just fixing my hair because our last video...
You were like, nowhere, never again am I going to come on the pod and let Danny just film and let...
I was wearing a beanie all day and then I took it off.
Bro,
I thought I had it on.
Look at me. I have a freaking hat on.
Yeah, I get it.
I know.
But...
Now I'm going to have to step my game up. Every episode, we're going to try to get like slightly more freaking suave.
By the end of the season, we'll be wearing tuxedos.
We'll be so dapper. We'll turn ourselves to the Real Dapper Crew. Welcome back to the Real Dapper Crew podcast.
We've rebranded.
No. So good.
Just fixing a couple of things here. Yeah, we're back. Another episode.
So thanks to everybody who watched last week's episode.
Yeah.
Shout out to, man, it was like so great to see an episode get, above 300 listens on YouTube. So those of you guys who listen, thank you. Like truly. Share our podcast with one friend. It would mean the world to us.
It was a good conversation. Great movie.
It was. And I'm excited to talk about today. As always, we start with the question of the day. And my question is like, what outside of before Hero? Because Jet Li made his name with some other movie, coming in. But what was like the main Jet Li film that you think of prior to Hero? Or maybe like you still to this day, this movie ranks above.
Yeah.
Hero.
Once Upon a Time in China.
Oh, okay. Mine's Jet Li 1.
Which one's that one? Is that the one?
Is it? I think so.
The one where it's like multiverse?
Yes.
I hate that movie.
Really?
I hate it. I remember being like, I don't know when that movie came out. 12 years old.
2001.
2001. Okay. So yeah, I was like 12, 13.
Mm-hmm.
I watched it and it ended. I was just like, that was just crap.
I remember
being upset.
I remember going to Hollywood Video. Oh man, I'm not sure if I want to say. Should I say? No, I'm going to talk about it right now. I remember going to Hollywood Video and like, oh, I want to see what this movie is. This looks cool. I like Jet Li. And fall in love with it. I don't know why. I don't know. It's been years since I watched that movie.
We should watch it.
But if you hate it, I mean, maybe I'll hate it this time around too. But when I was a kid watching that movie, Jet Li was freaking awesome. For whatever reason, that story was just cool to me.
And again, I saw it just the one time, 20 plus years ago.
I think I saw it.
So I can't remember. All I remember is just the ending where he's like on top of, like he gets taken to this like prison world. And
That's
then
right.
he's at the top of this like building. He's like, I will be the last one or something. Like, I don't know. He yells something obnoxious. And then all these people start.
Yes, they start fighting
him. And he's just taking them all out.
That's right.
And then the movie ends. I'm like, this was dumb. I wasted an hour and a half of this. I was such a snooty teenager when it came to my action movies.
You were snooty? Marcel.
I'm not anymore.
That's right. I'm refining you. I'm whittling away those hard edges, slowly but surely. So, anyways, oh, good. I'm glad I brought that up. No, Once Upon a Time China though.
It's a great one.
It's a great one.
It's a great one. We should add more like martial arts.
We 100% should. In fact, because I told you I was watching First Strike with Jackie Chan.
Okay, yeah.
I feel like that era, man, that era of like Asian actors coming into America to do films, I think really, I mean, I guess even before that, you have Bruce Lee.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know, that genre of like subgenre of movie of cinema. I think it's led to honestly John Wick. Like,
Oh yeah.
like
Of
those
course.
films paved the way for a lot of some of the films that we like praise today.
Yeah.
So, anyways, so good stuff.
Well, like we said, we're going to be talking Hero. Came out in 2002 in China. 2 years later, 2004, came out here
Yes.
in the States. But before we jump into it, I kind of want to get an idea, again, as always, what your relationship is with this movie. How many times have you seen it? What was the first time like? Let's go from there.
Yeah. So, my mom was actually really excited for this movie because my mom's,
Really?
I love you, mom. She watches probably all of our episodes, or at least watches all of our shorts and comments. So, shout out to you, mom. She was always on the pulse of like those like movies that were highly anticipated or going to be like, or that were being talked about as like contenders for stuff.
Okay.
Because she was always reading the newspaper or like whatever. And she also, as a Mexican who came to America, I think there was a level of like hype, like that she carried that hype from being in Mexico, and like what are the American movies that we should be watching,
Sure.
that sort of thing. In any case, so she was, and I'd already started to like, Jelly One, Once Upon a Time in China, or what did I just say?
Jet Li's one, Once Upon a Time in China.
China, and then what's the other one? There's one other one that I like from Jet Li. In any case, I remember seeing it, and it wasn't like highly anticipated. Like the people were really excited to see it. They were talking about the cinematography, some like it being hyped.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing the trailer and being intrigued. And I remember watching it because this is a time when like I was all for Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was a level of cinema that like was so different from what I'd been seeing from American films. And as a kid, even from I think 10 to 14, the fact that you're like fighting in the air, like this idea, this like semi fantastical fighting style,
Yeah.
was awesome.
The wuxia style.
The wuxia, yes. And so I remember watching. I watched it in theater. I don't remember who I went to theaters with though. So in any case, watched it. I thought it was, I really enjoyed it. I think I watched it 2 other times after that. But it's been now like 20 years, maybe 17 years since I last watched it. So revisiting it, it's a good time.
It's a great time. I remember watching this. I'm fairly sure I watched it for the first time on DVD at home. I didn't see it in theaters. I remember hearing all the hype about it. Loved, like you said, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Yeah. And it's interesting because like I think up to this point I was used to my martial arts movies being like the Jackie Chan's, the Bruce Lee's, right? And then you introduce this style of Crouching Tiger, and then we saw a very high level look of that, like with The Matrix as well.
Yeah.
And so like you start seeing more of these movies coming in, and Zhang Yimou would go on to do what's the other one? House of Flying Daggers, Curse of the Golden Flower, right?
Yeah.
So like he goes on to like do all these other movies, which I really like. House of Flying Daggers. Maybe we'll come back to that one.
I think I've seen it once, but I don't remember it. So I'm gonna say I haven't seen it.
Yeah,
because like if you don't remember it, you haven't.
And so like this genre is coming out, and I'm just like, I just love it.
It was a vibe.
It really was.
It kind of, I feel like it was a way. It was something that brought a new perspective, a new a flavor of cinema to me as a like as I started to falling a little more in love with film, seeing the diversity that came in action films, and I think the other aspect is like how like it wasn't all about like Arnold Schwarzenegger, True Lies, like Love / Rambo, like the American style to what they brought in those films and in Heroes, the stories that they're bringing, I thought were like deeper,
Yeah.
There were deeper films that like you could watch for the enjoyment, but if you're like if you watch again, there's something more that they're trying to tell.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was really great. So this film follows a nameless warrior, Jet Li, who arrives at the king of Qin's. Is it Qin or
We can pronounce it Kin. I think in Mandarin it's Jing.
Jing? Yeah, King of Jing palace, claiming to have defeated 3 notorious assassins, Broken Sword, Flying Snow, and Long Sky. As he recounts the events leading to his victory, the story unfolds through multiple perspectives, revealing deeper truths about heroism, loyalty, and sacrifice.
Let's jump in. I want to start off with the narrative, the story, like the format of this. This is a non-linear narrative.
This is a non-linear narrative, which I didn't know what that term was when I first watched it.
Yeah.
Right. Like, but like going into this movie, I think I appreciated it more in their storytelling aspect, and made me appreciate the arcs that happen in this film even more as an editor, as a filmmaker. I'm a filmmaker.
You are a filmmaker.
I know.
Yes.
Sometimes I get in my head about it.
I want to start off with that. Like, it's not a traditional linear story. It goes from the past to the present. It gives us I don't know if you've seen what's it called, Rashomon. It's a Kurosawa movie. I've been begging to watch for us to do a Kurosawa movie. Rashomon, it's an old one, but it basically tells it's a story of a sexual assault case and murder.
Okay.
Told by like 4 or 5 different people.
Oh, interesting. I love it.
And one of them being a little bit of a spoiler, but one of them is also the ghost of the person that was murdered.
Oh, cool. That's a cool perspective.
And so like everyone gives a different eyewitness of what happens. We'll add it to our list.
Well, so if you're listening, be sure to follow us on Instagram and in here on YouTube, of course. But we're going to be sending out polls on a more regular basis to get your feedback on what we should be doing for our next episode. So we'll put these films in the docket and put them in a lineup. And we want you guys to help us to decide what we should be watching this season. So be sure to, sign up wherever you follow us, and so you're notified on those posts.
Definitely. But I guess I want to ask you, like, why approach this story from that perspective, from a nonlinear narrative and this Rashomon style of different perspectives or half truths, half lies, whatever you want to see it.
Yeah.
But why do a movie, this particular one, from that approach?
That's a great question. So I was trying to think about what that same question because this film, I think it could have worked in a more traditional sense as well. There probably would have been a bit more of a story buildup, maybe a little bit more action or like additional sequences. But I think it could be the thoughts that I had were, one, I think it tells a more compelling story. You're revealing aspects as they physically, because of Nameless coming into the palace and having the King Jin's fear of these assassins, having the perspective of being separate.
Yeah.
And having the idea of like, as he gets closer, the king realizing the truth.
Yeah.
The truth. And not only the truth, but also questioning, like him being this king who has had a large goal, a goal that no other king or leader has thought about.
Yeah.
And it is willing to go and do the things that are necessary for that king, whether right or wrong. We're not holding judgment here. It's a safe place for right now. And so to accomplish something for what he thinks is best for the people, right? And so having the story not only develop physically as they draw nearer to each other, but then as the stories are told, how they're evolved because of questions and the like as each layer gets pulled apart, you discover the nuances that come into play.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts on that?
I like that. I think a big theme in this movie is that of like truth and perspective.
Yes.
Right? Can multiple perspectives carry some truth?
Yeah.
Right? And I think and whether that be in our everyday lives, whether I'm at work and I think I feel an experience went like this, whereas a coworker feels like it went another way, or my spouse, or whatever that may be, right? I think it's a strong theme of truth from multiple perspectives, and whatever that truth may be. And maybe we should preface this episode by saying, like, we are not, unless Danny, correct me if I'm wrong, but we are not experts in Chinese history.
Yo, I have zero. I mean, I'm still trying to learn Mexican history. Okay.
But and maybe we'll touch on this very lightly. Obviously, this movie it performed well. It got some backlash from Western audiences because of King Sheen's ruthlessness, and that Western audiences took this as this is a pro tyrannical tyranny movie, right?
Right.
And the director many times went on to say it wasn't. We'll touch on that in a bit. But I think a lot of people saw this as like, oh, this is a very pro-communist, pro-tyranny movie, and that's not what it was. But going back to the themes of these themes of love, honesty through perspective, it's a fun way and a very engaging way to say, yeah, we can just tell this story of like, here's how I defeated each of these three individuals, and now I'm here to attack you. But by deciding to say that's the overall story, but what if we give it a different perspective each time, and have the king try to figure out what is truth and what is not? And I love when he gives his perspective.
Yeah.
Right? You can see when you look at all the three different story points or three different perspectives, there's truth in all of them, right? But I love when he gives his. And the colors.
Okay, I want to get there, but I feel like we need. I want. There's some other stuff that we gotta wrap up because the colors are huge here.
Yeah.
No, I think you're 100%. I love that you brought up the fact that it's about the perspectives. I mean, the truth comes through perspective, right? Mm-hmm. And honestly, I want to bring about the fact that I think that Western audiences, like we as Western audiences, we don't understand Eastern philosophies or like some of the way they go about things, right? Mm-hmm. We're different cultures, but I think these films like Hero help us to understand a little bit more of like how they look at things, right? And doing what this is doing, right? Bringing perspective to understanding, right? What can we learn to be a little bit more understanding, so that we're not angry at each other, right? I'm not saying it's like going to solve the world, okay?
Sure.
All right. But what I do think though is that when in this narrative structure, not only through the story but also through the editing and the way they decided with the color, like all aspects of this film, when it comes to the story, they could have easily made this like nameless, starting with his family being lost and him having to find his way, and then going on this journey where they could have easily made it ambiguous from what city he's from.
Yeah.
Right? Could have been easily to be there. And then he goes on this journey and with this vision to want to fight, and him discovering, and then they hatching a plan to try to go and tackle, to go to the king.
Yeah.
Right? And that still would have been a decent movie.
Yeah.
I mean, a good movie with everybody who's in this film, who are amazing. And so, in that aspect, but what this brings, I feel like a level of, it's of mystery, a level of how of intrigue, but it helps us to focus on not necessarily the action or the the events, but what is as the story develops, the true core at the base that happens, right? Which we'll talk about, which is basically unifying China.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the colors. Okay, I feel like this is the biggest thing that I was reminded about. I remember the colors, I remember the shift, but looking it back now with the knowledge that I have, the us doing 2 full seasons of looking at films and whatnot, oh, dude, it's like one. A lot of times in the creator space, right? And I'm taking a step away from cinema. In the creator space, when you start, people sell LUTs, which are basically, filters that you can add to your cinematography. It's an easy way for you to get a stylized look. Sometimes people who are newer, and I've done this to myself, you slap it on, you don't fully understand, right? You might have left it on default when it's never supposed to be left on the default percentage. It's like too much. Remember when old days of Instagram, someone slaps on a filter and you go back and you're like, ooh, cringe on like a photo that you had. It's like, no, that wasn't. Why did I decide to post that? That's what can happen with LUT. But in every film, and so people can get carried away. But color has always been something that is to help motivate, set the tone, set what is it that we should be. It goes along with music. It sets the overall feelings that you should have. Mm-hmm. And this movie, I feel like, is a absolute. It's like it doesn't subtly do it. It like as you watch the film, it's like it's not slapping you in the face, but it's deliberately setting the mood and the perspective. The fact, oh, this is muted. Then you realize that the previous one was muted because you introduce more color in the next story.
Yeah,
and then a shift in color, and then a complete, and how each of those, who's telling the perspective, how that is deliberately changing the way the overall feeling without having to do additional dialogue, right?
Yes.
Like the colors and what is happening with the colors throughout the film are helping to do lifting that would normally people would do. Let's do a whole exposition piece.
Yeah.
Or let's do an additional scene or whatever. We don't have to do that because we're setting the tone with visual cues, right? I think one of the best ones I think is when the king starts to put pieces together, mm-hmm. and we go into the story where Nameless is with
Broken Sword,
and it's blue.
Yes,
a more tranquil color. They're more on the same page. They're trying to figure these. We didn't need to know what's happening, that they're in some kind of partnership or duo. We could tell because of the color perspective that was brought compared to the first story.
Yeah.
And then the second story, which is the first story of Flying Snow and Long Sky, right? Or no, and Moon. So mm-hmm. It's a reminder to me that when you look at your story, you should consider every aspect of yes. what you have for filmmaking yes. and try to leverage that in the best use case that you can. I'm not saying every film should try to do this, and but I think that if you look at your story and you're trying to understand, what is it? How do I want to go about telling this story? We don't always have to say, we don't need to look at it as, this is the one way. We could say how can we use color instead of, editing tricks, or how can we use music to motivate with a sense of the palette or the color texture? There's so many aspects that can come into this, and this film, I think, just re-engaged that desire to say, okay, this is something that I have to remind myself, what am I going to do on top?
Yeah. I love that you say, not every movie has to be doing this, right? And not every movie should be doing this. But I feel like a good approach in filmmaking is, how can I tell this story differently? Or how can I enhance this story? And what tools do I have in my toolbox as a director, as a filmmaker, as a writer, cinematographer, etc.,
Right.
to help enhance and elevate this story. And this could have easily been just like I said earlier, like let's just tell this a linear story. That's not what we did. They decided to tell this story about like truth versus perspective, or finding truth from different perspectives, and then let's enhance that by every version has its own color, right? Its own dominant color, but also the meaning and the why behind said color.
Yes.
Right? We look at the first one that Nameless says, right? It's very much red. He goes to the calligraphy school.
Yeah.
The red in the rooms.
Oh, not only that, but like I think that what it triggers for the actors.
Yes. What it triggers for the actors, but also what I'm feeling as a viewer.
Yeah.
Right? I'm seeing that, and immediately I'm like, why? Like it's passion filled, and I love just everyone's on their A game. The costume department, the hair and makeup, right? You have Snow and what's his face? Not Sky. Broken Sword, right? You have Snow and Sword with their hair just disheveled and messed, and like they both are just so brooding.
Shots are tight. Like you're like they're on like this like 85 to 100 mil. You're like you're observing, but it's passion filled.
Yeah.
Yes.
And also like red, just representing deception. Like immediately I'm like, dude, Nameless. What you hiding, bro? Like this ain't true, right? And so I love it. And the movie isn't trying to trick you. That is not the purpose of this movie.
Yes. I'm glad that you brought this up. I think that if you've watched this film and you felt like, oh, this is like propaganda, right? That's like they're using psychology. Zhang is using psychology of color to help drive this story in a way that that we don't have to spend additional time building relationships. Like what I think, like as the more I think as we discuss this, that he's being efficient in the story, right? But he's also telling a powerful story with the use of color.
Yes.
And throughout this film, the other film that I think of that is doing something similar is it had a very distinct color palette as well. It came out a couple years ago. I'll think of it. It'll come to me. But it wasn't as dramatic as this.
Okay.
It was more subtle, and the hues were different. Tangerine also had a very moody color, and they used it was one of the first, but it was a very big film that was shot on an iPhone that had a lot of buzz, but it had a very characteristic color to it.
Yeah.
The other things that I wanted to know is that, like, in most films, when we think of the color, so there are two aspects that I need to make very clear right at this point. There's color correction. What that is when we're shooting film, like when I'm shooting our videos for the podcast, we're looking to expose the film at a level that is appropriate. We want to get the best film or the best shot that we can. However, there are times when you may want to underexpose, which means that you might make it darker because you need to retain the highlights, or you want to retain the shadows, so you're going to shoot. And what you do is you go into the post-production, and you're going to bring those colors down or up and manipulate them to get them to a more balanced or to a set like area. But then you have the color grade. This is where the creativeness comes from, right? You might start to push the highs into a specific color palette, the orange and blue, or the teal and orange look that some movies have, or like think of Blade Runner, right? Like that's they're shifting the low colors to a specific color hue, while the highs are going to another hue, but they're doing it in a way that's artistic, right? It's subtle pushes that, from what I'm still learning this aspect of grading, but that also means that they're shaping the scene and amplifying what the cinematographers are doing. Zhang in Hero is fully committing to the color to emphasize this story. And I just think I just can't emphasize how much like this film I think is a gem.
It truly is
because of it.
And I think from obviously from the script to decide to make that decision very early on. The red is going to represent this passion, this intensity, right? You have this storm of arrows coming into the city, and Snow and Nameless come out and defend, and you have the leader of the calligraphy school still writing the calligraphy, right? And it's just coming in, and then you going back to the blue, right? To the king's perspective, where it's a little bit more calm, more trying to decipher what's really happening. Then you shift over to the white, which is Nameless's version of what happened.
Right.
And so that represents that clarity, more self-awareness, that selflessness, because that's where we really see them kind of start having that shift of ideals and morals change. But I love the green. Okay, the green, which represents harmony.
Yeah.
And that's the green is used when we see Snow and Sword together, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where we learn about their past. That's where we see them storming the palace together. The drapes in the inside the emperor or the king's hall, right?
I know.
The green, both of them working together. That's where we have that harmony. I feel like where the king is saying, "Nah, man, this guy had every opportunity to kill me."
Yeah.
Or even Sword is saying like, I realized this wasn't the way for me to do it. He finds harmony within himself to and that ability to then push Nameless to not assassinate the king, right? And so like it is just going back to earlier, like the movie isn't trying to like flip or trick you into like, what is the truth? What's really happening? No, it's taking you by the hand and saying, you're coming into this journey with me.
Yeah.
This visual journey of perspective of what is truth. And then how we come to the end of what we're trying to say. Right? And we do it through storyline, through beautiful editing, through this non-linear narrative, through colors. It is just, I love this movie so much. I love it much more now than I did when I was younger.
I told you right before we started, I was like, I'm not sure if I'm like super fond. I'm not sure I don't know if I'm excited to talk about it, but I'm also excited to talk about it. The reason why I said I'm not sure if I'm excited is because I forget the pacing. And it's deliberate.
It's very deliberate, yeah.
But I think what it is that it comes down is like I have a lot going on in my home life, in my work life, trying to, as a freelancer, trying to make the means to put food on the table. And it's in those times right now that like starting out, trying to find the clients who are in the prep work to look for video and for all sorts of stuff, right? And so I think I think because of the media landscape right now, I would get a little impatient with like the pacing. And it's not Hiro saying the fault.
Sure, yeah.
It's the fact that, like it was a different time when this movie was made, right? It still 100% holds up. It's still it's important that it's the way it's paced. But I think because this is the only time I would say like when you haven't seen a film like this in a while and you've forgotten like how it is, you can get impatient. And I think that it's the fault of the world of social media that we live in, that I think, because I've always been a big proponent that like, because people are always saying attention spans are shorter and shorter. I think there's a level to that. I just think that like, I've always said that it's not that our attention spans are shorter and shorter. It's that we've had so much content come out and we've learned to distinguish instantly what we do or do not like.
Okay.
I don't think people are dumber. Okay. I think that people, for them, there are people out there. Okay. I'm not going to say that there are not dumb people out there, but because there are. But what I think that is what the landscape is that we have so much. We have bombardment of instant and at our fingertips, literally at our fingertips. Whereas, and we forget sometimes if we can sit down and we're coming in to enjoy something, right? And we should enjoy it for what it is. And that might be slow, and we should be okay with that. I think Severance is another example of like letting it be like being okay with a slow burn, or of like telling a story that is another story that is non-linear, but we also don't know what's happening. Like, we're being dropped in and the story is being revealed as we go about what's happening.
Yeah.
Anyways, I just...
So let me ask you this then. What is this movie trying to say at the end?
It's a freaking good question. I mean,
or what do you take out of this movie?
I don't know. I the story here is to say that, like, sometimes what the movie's trying to tell us, like the initial overall feeling, right, is that that we may find disagreements because of ideologies and divisions that are like on a map, but maybe there is a better way in some fashion, or something that could be better, right? And it takes understanding of one another, or of taking moments to try to understand others, to maybe come together and go from there, right?
Yeah,
a level of that. But I think that there's something more to this film, and I was hoping to watch it a second time. I started it. I didn't get to finish it. I'm like I said, like, family life and work has been crazy, and so I didn't have as much time as I would have had in the last little bit. What were your thoughts on that same question?
I think the movie is telling us. I think the movie is exploring the ideas of personal sacrifice for a greater good.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I think it's great.
And it isn't about endorsing authoritarian rule. Like, that's not it.
No.
Right? That's not at all. It's telling this story in history, and a very stylized version of this story.
Probably slightly,
But I think that's what it is. That it's a story of a personal sacrifice for the greater good, and we see that in obviously in Nameless. We see that in what Sword is trying to do as he rides the two words he says on in the sand. Our land. I think in the actual Mandarin translation, it's under heaven.
Yes, that's correct.
Xianjing.
Isn't that what the original film name was?
Yeah. Oh, was it? Oh, was
I think so. If I'm like I have this like memory in my head about this.
Okay.
I don't know why. I'm trying to pinpoint it. Was I telling my mom? It has.
Let me. What was it? Tianjia. Under heaven, right? But in that version, but like I think that's what this movie's trying to say, and we see that the movie obviously draws a lot from like Chinese philosophy,
yes,
especially obviously Confucian, which their philosophy very contrary to Western philosophy, but their ideals really emphasize the harmony and the collective over the individual. And I don't know why, but I was thinking of like think of like a Western movie, like the Western genre. You always have the sheriff or an individual coming into the town and doing what he wants to get done.
Yes.
Right?
And what I believe is right.
What I believe is right. Right? And it's about the ideals and that's very much a Western ideal, right?
Yeah.
Like my progress, my good, my betterment, versus
not only that, but like the people believe that this individual has the betterment for the people.
Exactly. Right? And there's that line at the very end where Nameless he gives his spiel. The king comes to realize what the scroll is trying to say. And the Nameless just says, a dead man begs you to remember a warrior's ultimate act is to lay down his sword.
Yeah.
Right? And that's him saying, like, look, a dead man, not like, this is me. I'm putting this down, and I'm asking you to find a way to unite the kingdoms, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just really interesting. I think going back to what you were saying, like this movie continues to hold up. I think it continues more so now to resonate and has a very impactful message now than ever before.
Oh,
right?
dude. Yes.
How do we, as individuals, no, more importantly, as a society, as a community, as a family, as whatever it may be, as a group of people, find a harmony that is better for the greater good?
In fact, as of recording right now, Trump has been elected president for a second term or second. Yeah, that's what they called, right?
Yeah.
I took history. It has caused a lot of stress. We're both Mexicans, first generation here in America.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, what I think I don't want to get too political here. This is a little bit of political situation. This whole movie is about this this perspective of like you said, it actually is really good for us right now to try to think, what is it? Do we need to be putting up more barriers or more not barriers, maybe barricades, or trying to section out? No, this is the only, instead of trying to create harmony.
Yeah.
Red banisters are being dropped everywhere in inciting, trying to set a tone of passion, of rage, of action.
Mm-hmm.
What that action is, what that passion is, what that rage is for, can be to a lot of perspectives. But when we do that, when we do those things, we are, I don't know, we are forgetting about what other people's perspectives are, right?
Sure.
And that is what this story is ultimately saying, like, hey, I started in a spot on a mission to kill you.
Yeah. Go on.
No.
Nameless arrives to the palace with the intent of
murder,
of assassinating the king.
Yes.
Right? And it isn't until this exploration of perspectives of what he thought he was going to say, of how the king interprets it, then his final understanding of the scroll, and realizing that there is harmony between the calligraphy, between the sword and the heart, and there is peace, right? That he says, I get it.
Yeah.
And that's when for Nameless, he says, okay, no, I think this guy might be able to unite. But yes, I to your point, it is through these different perspectives, different greater understanding, empathy,
yeah,
and the ability to see the different perspectives, that change of heart happens. Nameless, Snow especially, they're very much justified in their decision to want to assassinate the king, right?
Yeah, no, that's the thing, is again, Zhang could have written this story in a way, I would almost say, that actually does emphasize, we should, fighting against what tyrannical rule.
Yeah.
Right? And in all across the world, there's been tyrannical rule in some level at some point in time.
Yeah.
But what I think is it's so beautiful is that he's like, what story do I really want to tell here? How do I want to be telling it? And I love I think one of my favorite scenes in this is when the king starts to engage with Nameless.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this, I think honestly one of the best things is when he throws a sword. He gives the sword to Nameless. Right? And that's the beginning of a shift.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so subtle. It's it is this, it's this they're having this battle of stories, of ideals.
Yeah.
And we're all along for the ride.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I don't know, so great. I wanted to make a note on the what is it called? What is it, calligraphy, or is that what it's called?
Calligraphy, yeah.
What they're doing, right?
Yeah.
I can't remember. I want to say it's actually a church talk. I think Elder Cook, somebody from our church. I swear, maybe I'm confusing. Anyways, I have this talk in my head of somebody talking about of a glyph that they wanted to give to their wife on like an anniversary. That I think one of them was Chinese, or anyways, they're a split marriage of different cultures. Or to their dad, I can't. Anyways, there's this glyph, but this glyph was important, and they could not find somebody to do it because there's this level of what goes into that character glyph for those calligraphers. Because in Chinese, there's like multiple ways to write, I think, a word.
Yeah.
And I think they mentioned this in the film.
Yeah, right? He asks for sword to be written out.
Yeah.
Right? And there's 20 different ways.
20 different ways, right?
19, he's like, I asked for the 20th version of it.
Yeah.
Right?
So this is something we do not have in Western culture, right? We don't have something that we can look at that tells a story within one word, right? Because of the way it's written. Mm-hmm. We have words, right? We don't have just a set of characters that we can look at, and we can have different meanings and like how they're put together and what that invokes for an individual. And if I remember correctly, that this character that they wanted to have for their family member, that it was difficult because it was not only the word didn't have a ton of character, like different versions, but it was also what was the overall meaning behind that word. Mm-hmm. There's a level of introspection for the calligrapher in order to do it justice. And there's something about that level of introspection and perspective for oneself in order to because sword, like the pen is mightier. The pen is mightier than the sword.
Yeah.
Right. But like, do you lay down your sword, or are you going to, pierce someone with your sword? Right. There's the intent of these things, which I don't know. I just felt like as we've been talking, I was reminded of that story of like how much that impacted, like this desire to have the word sword written, and Broken Sword himself depicting, like, I think he might have done a couple versions.
We see him practicing, right?
We see him doing it.
And he's probably trying to finesse that technique, right? And the right symbols for it.
Right.
Which helps at the end for the king to realize, like he throws the sword to Nameless, right?
Yes.
Turns around, gives his back to Nameless.
Yes.
Almost accepting defeat.
Yeah.
And starts analyzing the symbol.
Yeah.
And that's when he comes to this realization of like, wait, no, I've come to the realization this doesn't contain any secrets to his swordmanship like you claimed, right? Rather, it's showing. Let me see if I can find the actual quote. But he says, "Oh, here it is. In the first state, man and sword become one and each other. Here, even a blade of grass can be used as a lethal weapon. In the next stage, the sword resides not in the hand but in the heart. Even without a weapon, the warrior can slay his enemy from 100 paces. But the ultimate ideal is when the sword disappears altogether. The warrior embraces all around him. The desire to kill no longer exists. Only peace remains." Right? And so like for sword, Broken Sword to go through and find the right technique, and then the realization that the king has of, look at how I'm interpreting this. Again, going back to this theme of perspective.
Oh, dude.
And this movie is great.
It's so good. No, and like, I'm like, we're in such a political, like, uncertainty on so many different levels for all sides.
Yeah.
and this film, like thinking about what this film is trying to tell us about perspective, about
sacrifice,
a sacrifice
for the greater good.
For the greater good. What are we willing to sacrifice in order to do the right thing? Are we willing to sacrifice to do the right thing?
Yeah. Great stuff.
Dude, this movie, dude.
It's good. Favorite scene? Favorite?
Oh, yeah, nice. Wait on timing. Give me a minute to reminisce. Do you have one off the top of your head right now?
I think I love the beginning battle between Nameless and what's his face, Fly.
Sky? No,
Sky.
Long
yeah,
Sky.
Yeah.
Donnie Yen, dude.
Donnie Yen. I
love this.
I love the long spear, right?
Yes.
Like the choreography between that, like having to learn how to like handle that thing and keep it like perfectly balanced. The core strength that requires to do that.
Not only that, but I love the I don't know what's called, the Chinese like
the little guitar,
the guitar thing.
Yeah.
Oh, I truly that first fight scene I think is the longest. I think it might be the longest. No, it's about. I think they're all about
the same. Yeah,
but that maybe feels the longest. Maybe because of I think the color.
Yeah,
some of the like it's muted. Mm-hmm. We don't realize the whole beginning portion is muted until we start to introduce these colors as the story goes on.
And they're the big chunk of that fight is in their mind. Right? Yeah. So like, it's so good. So the decision to again depict that in a muted black and white color, just
it felt like, oh, that's just because they're in their mind.
They're in their mind.
But the question really is did they actually have a fight? Right? Mm-hmm. Right? Because
we know that it's like
there was
a battle, right, that they agreed upon in front of the soldiers, so that way there would be eyewitnesses.
Correct.
But Snow asks like, how is Sky? And it's like, oh yeah, I wounded him enough. He'll be fine in like 3 days.
Yeah.
Right?
But I don't know. I love the guitar, the Chinese music that when when you play one more. Mm-hmm. And
they stop fighting to ask him.
I know.
Play one more. I love that. I love that so much.
And then the song that is played, like the fact that okay, let's do this. And he's blind. Mm-hmm. And so having just the staccato-ness, the build up, and it, because there's just the music in this, man.
It's so good.
It's so good. Anyways, that's a great.
I think that one in the fight on the lake.
That one was beautiful too.
I don't say this about like the John Wicks or the Extractions.
No,
that lake scene, that lake battle. Like I get emotional.
It's like yes, no, but I think you're like, Wick and Extraction, like it's driving.
Yeah.
Right. We're not supposed to. It's supposed to be like, oh, that was cool or that was crazy. Wuxia, there's this level of elegance and of a story that's being told outside of just the fighting.
Yeah.
And I think that like every time I watch it, it's freaking awesome.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
I was just saying, I was happy that Netflix tried to do another arc to the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon story.
Oh, that's right, they did, huh?
Did you watch that?
I didn't. Was it good?
I think I remember liking it, but I want to watch it again. I want to watch the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. But I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But I don't remember what the ending was. But I just remember like how much I missed Wuxia, like the art of what they put on film for this. So good.
Yeah, I just there's something like so emotional about that because again, the king assumes that what's his face, Nameless, they'd kill
Snow,
right? And so Sword is there in the middle of the lake. There's this like her body's just there in this I don't know
what it is.
Gazebo funeral thing, right? And
If you know what it is, let us know in the comments.
Yeah, please do. And so then Nameless shows up, and they have this like the music just plays so quietly, emotionally, and also like the fact that that sequence took like I think I read 3 weeks to film because they had to the director obviously wanted it to be very still, the water.
Yeah.
And it was only still from like the hours of like 7:30 in the morning to like 10 in the morning.
Yeah, no, and they're wiring.
And they're wiring. And so that meant like the whole cast had to show up for hair and makeup like at 5 in the morning, rehearse a bit starting at like 7, and then try to shoot
like this specific window.
A specific window, right? So it's such a beautiful. I think those two are my favorite.
I think for me, it's the first when Nameless goes and sees Broken Sword with the red.
Mm-hmm.
Followed by Snow and the Rage with the transition from yellow or red to yellow.
From red to yellow when they're in like the forest. And she's fighting against Moon.
Yes, you're right.
Yes. That transition is really cool.
It's so good. It's just. I think the other part is like the craziness of all the arrows that comes into play there.
Uh-huh.
Anyways, yeah, I think that and the first fight to me is probably some of my favorite.
What a great movie!
What a great movie!
I'd been wanting to watch this for a while. I'm glad we did.
Me too, actually. In fact, I bought it. Like,
yeah, so did I.
Yeah, I was like, can't see it anywhere, and I'm glad it's part of my repertoire yet again. Because I think I had it on DVD at one point, but I think
I know I had it in DVD
or or VHS maybe. I don't remember. I know, it's these films. Some of these films that like were like really impactful. Again, I think this is one of those moments of like we get caught up in the hype of all the stuff that we have right now and all the cool. Well, like Brave New World's coming out. Perfect example of this. Okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna get all hyped for Brave New World, and then we're gonna go see it, and we're gonna be like, maybe we'll be semi-disappointed because it's like, who knows? Who knows? Something's not gonna fit right, or it's like, oh, this is just another setup. I don't know what's gonna happen.
All right.
But we have a lot of baggage going into these films.
We have a lot of baggage.
All right. I didn't have baggage going into Hero.
No.
I remember it being beautiful, and it's even better.
And looking back at it 20 plus years later, like, oh.
Yeah. I can't say the same for Marvel films.
Yeah, like the fact that it still holds up, both visually and thematically, and from a story perspective, like, these are classics. These are classics. And, yeah, to your point, I don't know. Can you really say that about all these MCU, DC movies, whatever it is? Like, these franchise movies?
There are some. I mean, obviously Endgame, but that's because there's an emotional journey that we took it on.
Yeah.
But even then, will it hold up as well as this movie has in 25 years?
Yeah.
20, whatever it is. So, oh, dude. Man, you know what? We hope you enjoyed today's episode as much as we enjoyed discussing Hero. Don't forget to subscribe on whatever platform you get your podcasts. If you like this episode, please leave us a review. It does help us get discovered.
But we want to hear from you. What did you think of Hero? Did we miss anything? You can connect with us by joining our newsletter at realchums.com/newsletter. You can also find me, Marcel, on Instagram and Threads at Marstrosity, MarCtrosity.
And me at Rubio.tv. Join us next week as we discuss the 1985 film Clue with a special guest.
Yes. Dude, it's been
a while, so we have a special guest.
Pretty sure that, and I haven't seen this movie probably since I was like 12.
Oh, dude, that's crazy. I think I watched it like 3 years ago.
Oh, really? Yeah. I've only seen this once.
I love this movie.
I had a great time, and I just haven't revisited it.
I will say, I'm pretty sure that the first time I watched this, I was in college.
Oh, okay.
So, we'll talk about it.
We'll talk about it.
Later.